Our lesson says we are at stage 10, paragraph page 881. Last headword was ink, new word type of lesson. Okay, let's start with revision. Okay, here we go. What can cause cracks in walls and ceilings? What can cause cracks in walls and ceilings? Age,
Age,
dampness,
dampness,
dryness, or bad
dryness,
workmanship
or bad workmanship
can cause cracks
can cause cracks
in walls and ceilings.
in the walls and ceilings.
Very good. What does the verb to spin mean? What does the verb to spin mean? The verb to
The
spin
verb
means
to spin
to
means
turn round and round
to round and round
very quickly
very
or make
quickly,
something
or
something
make something
turn round and round
to round and round
very quickly.
very quickly.
What are the three forms of spin? What are the three forms of spin? The three forms of
The three
spin
forms of
are
spin
spin, spun,
are
spun.
spin, span.
What's a spin dryer? What's a spin dryer? A spin dryer
A spin
is
dryer
a machine
is a
that
machine
dries clothes
that dries
by
clothes
spinning them round
by spinning them round
very quickly.
very quickly.
Do you think most people join gyms mainly because they want to become slimmer rather than because they want to get fit? Do you think most people join gyms mainly because they want to become slimmer rather than because they want to get fit? Yes or no?
Yes,
I think most
I think
people join
most
gyms
people
mainly
join gyms
because
mainly
they want
because
to become
they want to become
slimmer rather than
slimmer
because
rather
they
than
want to
because
get fit.
they want to get fit.
Right, if you were an actor, what kind of role would you like to play in a film? If you're an actor, what kind of role would you like to play in a film? If I were an
If
actor,
I were an
I'd
actor,
like to play
I'd like to
the
play
role of.
the role of detective.
Very good. Do you think computers will ever replace school teachers in the classroom? Do you think computers will ever replace school teachers in the classroom? Yes or no?
Yes,
I think computers
I think
will
computers
replace school
will
teachers
replace school
in
teachers
the classroom.
in the classroom.
Very good. Is it always necessary to book a table before going to a restaurant? Is it always necessary to book a table before going to a restaurant? No, it isn't
No,
always
it is always
necessary to book a table
necessary to book a table
before going to a
before
restaurant.
going to a restaurant.
Very good. Do famous actors, singers, or entertainers normally make their own arrangement with the venues they were booked to perform? Do famous actors, singers, or entertainers normally make their own arrangement with the venues they were booked to perform? No. Famous
No,
actors,
famous actors,
singers, or
singers,
entertainers
or
don't
entertainers
normally make
don't normally make
their own arrangements.
their
Their own
arrangements,
arrangements
their own arrangements
with the venues
with the venues
they were booked to perform.
they were booked there
To perform,
to perform.
they've nearly
They nearly
always got managers
al- always got the managers
who make their arrangements
who there make arrangements
for them.
for them.
Greg, give me an example of the word anyway with the meaning of despite that. Give me an example of the word anyway with the meaning of despite that, please. His English
His
is
English
very good indeed,
is is very good indeed,
but he wants
but he
to do
wants
lessons anyway.
to do, to do lessons anyway.
Give me an example of anyway used in order to give another reason for something. Give me an example of the word anyway used in order to give another reason for something. I think they're too
I think
young
they're too
to
young
get married, and
to get
I'm not
married,
even
and
sure
I'm not even sure
they really love
they really love
each other anyway.
each other anyway.
Very good. Give me an example of anyway used in order to change the subject of a conversation or return to a subject that was being talked about previously. Give me an example of anyway used in order to change the subject of a conversation or return to a subject that was being talked about previously, please. So, anyway,
So anyway,
after the film,
after the
we
film,
decided to go to a
decided
club.
to go to a club.
Where I get what's the noun of the adjective warm? What's the noun of the adjective warm? The noun of
The
the
noun
adjective warm
of the adjective
is
warm
warmth.
is warmth.
Very good. Should we always remove muddy shoes before entering a house? Should we always remove muddy shoes before entering a house? Yes, we should
Yes,
always remove
we should always remove
muddy shoes
muddy shoes
before entering a house.
before entering house.
Very good. Okay, make a sentence with the word meanwhile. Make a sentence with the word meanwhile, please. Chris was
Chris
doing his homework,
was doing his
and
homework,
meanwhile,
and
the
meanwhile,
other children
the
were
other
playing
children
football
were playing for
in
football
the garden.
in the garden.
Very good. What do we mean when we say that the chicken pecks the ground? What do we mean when we say that a chicken pecks the ground? When we say
When we
that a
say
chicken
that the chicken
pecks the ground,
pecks the
we
ground,
mean that
we
it
mean
picks up
that it picks up
food from the ground
food from the
with
ground
its beak.
with its beak.
Very good. What do we call the blocks of hard clay that are commonly used to make buildings? What do we call the block of hard clays that are commonly used to make buildings? We call the
We
blocks
call
of hard
the
clay
block of hard
that are commonly
clay
used
that are commonly
to
used
make buildings. Bricks.
to make building bricks.
What else can we make from clay? What else can we make from clay? We can make plates,
We make
cups,
make plate cups,
etc. from clay.
etc. from clay.
Why do the police sometimes block a road? Why do the police sometimes block a road? The police sometimes block
The
a road
police sometimes block the road
because
because
why?
a car accident
There's a car accident.
occur.
Very good. What is cream and where does it come from? What is cream and where does it come from? Cream is the
Cream
fatty part of
is the
milk
fatty part of
or
milk
anything which
or
looks
anything
or feel
which look or
similar to
feel
it.
similar to it.
Do you believe it's worth spending money on expensive face creams? Do you believe it's worth spending money on expensive face creams? Yes or no?
No,
I don't believe it's
I don't
worth
believe
spending
it's worth
money
spending
on
money
expensive face creams.
on expensive face cream.
Very good. Do you spring out of bed in the morning? Do you spring out of bed in the morning? Yes or no?
Yes,
I spring out of
I
bed
spring up
in the
of
morning.
bed in the morning.
What are the three forms of spring? What are the three forms of spring? The three forms of
Three
spring
forms
are
of
spring,
spring,
sprang,
upspring,
sprung.
sprung, sprung.
Can you feel the springs inside the mattress on your bed? Can you feel the springs inside the mattress on your bed? Yes or no?
Yes,
I can feel the
I can
springs
feel
inside
springs
the mattress
inside
on
the
my bed.
mattress on my bed.
Very good. Are cats well known for having a curious nature? Are cats well known for having a curious nature? Yes, cats
Yes,
are well known
ca- cats are well
for
known
having a
for
curious
having
nature.
a curious nature.
If you heard a curious noise outside your room in the middle of the night, would you stay in bed or go and investigate? If you heard a curious noise outside your room in the middle of the night, would you stay in bed or go and investigate? If I heard a
If I
curious
heard
noise
a, a curious noise
outside my room
outside my
in the
room
middle of the night,
in the, of the night,
in the middle of the night,
in the middle of the night,
I'd
I'd go and investigate.
investigate. What do we call a police officer who investigates crimes? What do we call a police officer who investigates crimes? We call a
We
police
call
officer
a police
who
officer
investigates crimes,
who investigates
a
crime,
detective.
a detective.
Very good. Are you keen on sport? Are you keen on sport? Yes or no?
No,
I'm not keen on sport.
I'm not keen on sports.
Are young children nearly always keen to learn new things? Are young children nearly always keen to learn new things? Yes, young
Yet,
children are
young children
nearly always
are
keen
nearly always
to
keen
learn new things.
to learn to learn new things.
About how many extra articles of clothing would you say the average person wore on a cold winter's day? About how many extra articles of clothing would you say the average person wore on a cold winter's day? I'd say
I'd
the
say
average person
the average person,
wore about
or about
how many
three
extra articles of clothing
extra article
on a
clothing
cold winter's day.
on a cold winter's day.
Very good. What kind of people write articles in newspapers? What kind of people write articles in newspapers? The kind of people who
Kind of
write
people who
articles
write
in
articles
newspapers
in
are
newspaper
professional writers
are professional
or
writer
people who
or
have
people who
special
have
knowledge
special
of
knowledge
particular subjects.
of particular subjects.
If you work as a journalist, what kind of articles would you like to write? If you work as a journalist, what kind of articles would you like to write? If I work
If I work
as a journalist,
as a
I'd
journalist,
like to write about.
I'd like write about economics.
Very good. What do we mean when we say that someone behaves boldly? What do we mean when we say that someone behaves boldly? When we say that
When we
someone
say that
behaves
someone
boldly,
behaves
we mean
boldly,
that
we
they
mean
behave
that they behave
courageously or
courageously
confidently
or
and
confidently
without fear.
and without fear.
Do you think clothes in bold colors suit you? Do you think clothes in bold colors suit you? Yes or no?
No,
I don't think
I don't
clothes
think
in bold
clothes
colors
in bold
suit
colors
me.
suit me.
Why do we sometimes type a word in a document in bold? Why do we sometimes type a word in a document in bold? We sometimes
We
type
sometimes
a word in a
type a
document
word
in
in a
bold
document
so
in
that
bold
the word
so that
is
the
more
word
noticeable
is more
on
noticeable
the page.
on the page.
Very good. What am I doing? What am I doing? You're striking your pen
You are striking your pen
on the table.
on the table.
If you were struck by lightning and survived, would the experience change the way you felt about your life? If you were struck by lightning and survived, would the experience change the way you felt about your life? Yes or no?
Yes,
If I were struck
if I were
by lightning
struck by lightning
and survived,
and
the
survive,
experience
the
would
experience
change the way
would change the
I
way
felt about my life.
I I felt in my life
About my life.
about my life.
If you're on your way to a friend's birthday party and it suddenly struck you that you forgot their present, would you go back and get it or would you just go without it? If you're on your way to a friend's birthday party and it suddenly struck you that you've forgotten their present, would you go back and get it or would you just go without it? If I were on
If I
my
were
way
on my way
to a friend's
to a
birthday
friend's
party
birthday
and
party
it suddenly struck
and
me,
it suddenly struck me,
it suddenly
it suddenly
struck me that
struck
I'd
me
forgotten
that I
their presence,
forgotten their present.
I'd
I'd go back
and get it.
and get it.
If we describe a building as striking, what do we mean? If we describe a building as striking, what do we mean? If we describe a building
If we describe a
as
building
striking,
as a
we
striking,
mean that
we
it
mean
is interesting
that it is interesting
and attracts our
and attract
attention
uh, our attention
because it looks
because
different
it looks different
from other buildings.
from other buildings.
Very good. Do you think that people who shoplift should be imprisoned? Do you think people who shoplift should be imprisoned? Yes or no?
Yes,
I think people
I think people
who shoplift
who shoplift
should be imprisoned.
should be imprisoned.
Very good. Okay. Is there a cure for a common cold? Is there a cure for the common cold?
Mm.
No, there isn't
No,
a cure
there is a cure
for the common cold.
for common cold.
Do you usually take a cold remedy to make you feel better when you have a cold? Do you usually take a cold remedy to make you feel better when you have a cold? Yes or no?
Yes,
I usually take
I usually
a cold
take
remedy
a cold
to make
remedy
me feel better
to make me feel better
when I have a cold.
when I have a cold.
Very good. What type of aircraft take off vertically? What type of aircraft take off vertically? Helicopters and
Helicopters,
certain special
cancer,
airplanes.
special, special
Airplanes take off
airplanes
vertically.
take off vertically.
Very good. Why do some people prefer to stain woodwork rather than paint it? Why do some people prefer to stain woodwork rather than paint it? Some people prefer
Some people
to stain
prefer
woodwork
to stain
rather than
woodwork
paint it
rather than paint
because
it
the
because
woodwork
the woodwork
looks more natural
looks more
if
natural
it is stained.
if it is stained.
If you discovered an ink stain on an article of clothing, how would you try to remove it? If you discovered an ink stain on an article of clothing, how would you try to remove it? If I discovered
If I
an
discovered
ink stain
an ink
on an
stain
article
or an
of
article
clothing,
of
I
clothing,
tried to remove it by
I try remove it
by
by washing by
by
washing clothes.
by washing the clothes. Very okay. So
Yes,
that's the end of our revision. Let's have new work. Okay, so repeat. Creep, prep, prepped.
creep, crept.
Very good. Okay, listen. The word creep means either to move forwards very slowly or to move slowly and quietly so that nobody hears you. The paradigm of creep is creep, prep, prep. Let's practice. What does the word creep mean? What does the word creep mean? The word creep
The
means
word creep means
either to move forward
either to move forward
very slowly or to
very
move
slowly
slowly
or to
and quietly
move slow and quietly
so that nobody hears
so
you.
that nobody
Hears you.
hears you.
Very good. Give me an example of each. Give me an example of each, please. The traffic was creeping
The traffic
along
was creeping
very
along
slowly,
very slowly,
owing to the fact
o- owing to the fact
that several roads
that several
had
roads
been blocked by the
had been
police.
blocked by the police.
Elizabeth crept into the room
Elizabeth into the room
so as not
so as not
to wake the baby.
to wake the baby.
Very good. Next repeat passage.
Passage,
Extract.
extract,
Very good. Passage and extract are nouns. The word passage can mean a long, narrow space, generally between two buildings, or inside a building, like a corridor. It can also mean an extract from a speech or a piece of writing. Let's practice. What does the word passage mean? What does the word passage mean? The word passage
the word
can
passage
mean a long,
can mean a
narrow
long,
space,
narrow space,
generally between
general
two
between
buildings,
two buildings
or inside a building,
or inside building,
like a corridor.
like a
It
corridor.
can also mean
It can also
a
mean
short extract
a short extract
from a speech
from a
or a
speech
piece of writing.
or piece of writing.
Very good. Next, repeat steer,
Here,
steering wheel.
steering wheel.
Very good. Steer is a verb which means to control the direction of something like a car. For example, he's steering his car out of the garage. Steering wheel is a noun. It is the wheel that a driver turns to control a car. Let's practice. What am I pretending to do? What am I pretending to do? You're pretending to
You are
steer a
pretending
car.
to steer a car.
And what do we call the thing I'm pretending to hold? And what do we call the thing I'm pretending to hold? We call the thing
We call the
you're
thing
pretending to hold
you are pretending
a
you
steering
hold
wheel.
A steering wheel.
Very good. Next, repeat aside.
Aside.
Very good. The word aside means on one side or to one side. Let's practice. What does the word aside mean? What does the word aside mean? The word aside
The word
means on
aside
one
means
side or
on one
to
side
one side.
or to one side.
Do you put money aside each month to save for any special purpose? Do you put money aside each month to save for any special purpose? Yes or no?
No,
I don't put money aside
I don't put
each
money
month
aside
to save
each month
for
to
any
save
special purpose.
for any special purpose.
During an evening out with friends, would you have to take somebody aside from the rest of the group if you wanted to speak to them in private? During an evening out with friends, do you have to take somebody aside from the rest of the group if you wanted to speak to them in private? Yes, during
Yes,
an evening
during
out
evening out
with friends,
with
I'd
friends,
have to
I have to
take somebody aside,
t- take take some aside,
take somebody aside
take somebody aside
from the rest of the
from the
group
rest of the
if
group.
I wanted to
I
speak
wanted
to them
to speak
in
to
private.
them in private.
Very good. Next, repeat obey,
Obey,
disobey.
disobey.
Very good. Obey and disobey are both verbs. To obey means to do what you are told or expected to do according to someone in authority or a rule or law. The opposite of obey is disobey. For example, good children always obey the teachers, but bad children don't. Bad children disobey the teacher at school. Let's practice. The naughty children at primary school always obey instructions that their teachers give them. The naughty children at primary school always obey instructions that their teacher give them. No. Naughty
No,
children
no
at,
teacher children
at primary school
at the primary school
don't always obey
don't always obey
instructions that
instructions
their teacher
that the
give
teachers
them.
give
They
them.
sometimes
They
disobey them.
sometimes disobey them.
Very good. Okay, so now let's move on to reading.
Okay,
Okay, so our reading is at stage 10, paragraph page 833. Okay, and our last headword was lonely. Lonely. Start with lonely.
lonely. O- o- lonely. When people go and live in another country because of their job, do they sometimes feel lonely at first? Yes. When people go and live in another country because of their job, they sometimes feel lonely at first. Do people always feel lonely when they are alone? No, people don't always feel lonely when they are alone.